Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, we're going to talk about Maple Leafs prospects. Because while the Maple Leafs might not boast a top-end farm system like they did a couple of years ago when they had the likes of Matthews, Marner, and Nylander still being rookies, they still got a pretty good one and a bunch of prospects to brag about. So first off, I'm going to start this video with what qualifies as a Maple Leafs prospect, because there's guys like Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren who already have NHL experience. Are we qualifying them as prospects? And for the sake of this video, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to include them in their own tier though, if that makes sense. We're going to have a conversation about them separately. So first up, we're going to talk about Nick Robertson. And if you want to know a lot more about Nick Robertson than what I'm going to touch on in this video, check out the video that I made solely dedicated to him. But this is a tool for prospects. It's basically showing us prospects that are in their draft plus 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and in their draft year. And we're going to use this tool to talk about some of the prospects in today's video. It's called Pick 224, Pick 224 by Dave McPherson or Dave MacP on Twitter. And basically this tool is going to help us compare other players in Nick Robertson's draft year to kind of get us a case of how he's stacking up against his peers. So the column that I would like you guys to direct your attention to is the primary points per game. Primary points being goals or first assists. And Nick Robertson is third highest on this list among draft plus 1 players. And these are players from all over the world, right? They're seeing guys from the OHL, the MHL, the Super Elite, the Western Hockey League, the AJHL, the Quebec League, the Finnish League, the Russian League, the Swedish League, wherever, they're on here. And if you're looking at the company that Nick Robertson is in terms of draft plus 1 players when looking at primary points per game, he's in the same territory as Connor McMichael, Arthur Kaliev, and Philip Tomasino. And those are players that were drafted well ahead of him in his draft year. 2 out of the 3 of those guys being later first round picks, and Arthur Kaliev just being just outside the second round. So while the Maple Leafs did not have a first round pick last year, they did draft a first round talent in Nick Robertson. And in terms of even strength goals, if you direct your attention just above the cursor there, Nick Robertson is first in the OHL out of all of these players. Another Maple Leafs prospect that maybe you haven't really heard a lot about so far, but you're going to be hearing his name really soon, is Mikhail Abramov of the Quebec Major Junior League. Now, he was drafted in the 4th round. He's a little bit of a smaller player, being 5'11", 162 pounds, but he might grow into that a little bit. But the most impressive thing about him is that he's got 35 goals and 76 points on the Victoriaville Tigers this season. And if you're taking a look at that team, there is no one even close to him. So it's not like someone else is drastically propping him up. He's doing this all by himself. If we come back over to pick 224 here and we take a look at Mikhail Abramov, yeah, all those stats are really impressive and stuff like that. But where does he stack up against with his peers? And if you take a look down a little bit lower on the list towards the bottom of the screen, you're going to see Nolan Foote there. Foote was a first-round pick last year, going 27th overall to the Tampa Bay Lightning, but you're going to see on there that his NHL rights are owned by the New Jersey Devils. He was the main piece involved in the Blake Coleman trade that saw Blake Coleman go from the Devils to the Tampa Bay Lightning. There was also a first-round pick in that trade and maybe 1 or 2 other smaller pieces, but if we come back over to pick 224 here, the main thing that I wanted to highlight about Mikhail Abramov in terms of his peers is that he's 32nd in primary points per games played among draft plus 1 players. Again, the Toronto Maple Leafs did not have a first round pick in last year's draft, but they got a lot of talent out of the picks that they did have. This list is a centerman by the name of Nick Abruzzese, a good old Italian boy here, and he's a little bit of a smaller forward again, 5'9", 160 pounds, but he is a guy that's putting up impressive points in the NCAA right now in his first year at Harvard University. Usually prospects in the NCAA, we don't really normally tend to see them until they're maybe 22 or 23 years old, so we're still a little bit ways away from seeing Nick Abruzzese, but we know guys that have taken the NCAA route and jumped right into the NHL. Guys like Cale Makar last season, guys like Tyler Bozak in the past, and we've seen them do pretty well. But if we take a look at what pick 224 is saying about him, he's 9th on this list by all NCAA players in the 2020 season in terms of primary points per games played, and he's ahead of guys that were drafted in the first round last season, like Trevor Zegras, like Alex Newhook, like Cole Caulfield. And I know that those players are in their draft plus 1 year, and Nick Abruzzese is in his draft plus 3 years, so he was eligible to be drafted a couple of years beforehand, so he was an overager, but still, it's an impressive prospect to boast if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. And the next two prospects that I'd like to touch on here are Riley Stotts, and he was drafted later on in the 3rd round of the 2018 draft, and then Semyon Darganchintsev, who was one of the youngest players that was eligible in the 2018 draft. He's obviously Nick Robertson's line mate in Peterborough, and he was drafted in the 3rd round of that draft as well. But in terms of pick 224, I couldn't really find too many good comparables around them in terms of their primary points per games played, but they still are top 100 players in the year that they were eligible to be drafted in, so they're still in line where the Maple Leafs drafted them, and they could become useful players for the Toronto Marlies real soon. And there are a couple of other players that need to be talked about on this list. Obviously, if we just run down it, Sean Durzi was included in a trade in the American Hockey League, and I touched on how he was doing a little while ago in my Jake Muzzin trade anniversary video. Mac Hollowell is a defenseman that a lot of people really, really like playing in the American Hockey League. He's just a player that transitions really well up the ice. He's really good at getting his forwards the puck in the defensive zones, through the neutral zone, and in the offensive zone. I would really look for him in the coming years to really blossom into a player that could help out the Toronto Maple Leafs. He also shoots right. He's a defenseman. He shoots left. He's a little bit of a bigger guy, 6'1", 175 pounds, but he's got 49 points in 53 games with the Spokane Chiefs this year. And there is a comparable that I would like to throw out there on pick 224. Now, we're seeing Philip Kral here, but another interesting player that was drafted in the same year as Philip Kral, or he was eligible to be picked in the same year, is Jet Wu. Jet Wu is a Vancouver Canucks prospect right now, and a lot of people were really hoping that he would have been in the possible return that Toronto would have gotten for Tyson Barrie when that trade was being discussed. But obviously, now we know that the Vancouver Canucks were really only offering like Troy Stetcher and a 3rd round pick for Tyson Barrie, so better off that the Leafs just held on to him and hoped that the team did turn around. But Jet Wu, a really decent prospect that people were hoping for in return for Tyson Barrie, and if Philip Kral's in the same conversation as him, then maybe we got something not too bad in Philip Kral. And the next prospect or prospects that I would like to highlight on this list before talking about Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren is our goaltending prospects, because it kind of leads into a conversation that I want to have here on another day about Frederik Andersen. He's going to be in a contract year next season, and a lot of fans have been really worried about Freddie this season, so we're going to have to make a decision on him pretty soon. So what better prospect to look at than the in-house options that we have in terms of goalie? And Ian Scott has been injured all season long, but the season before that, he won goaltender of the year in the CHL, boasting a .932 save percentage. I don't know what his injury exactly is, but it's a pretty significant one, and for a goaltender to lose an entire year of development at his age, it's going to take a little bit for him to rebound, but if he regains that form, he could be a serious prospect for the Toronto Maple Leafs moving forward. Really, the only other serious goalie prospect that the Toronto Maple Leafs have in their system right now, other than Ian Scott, is Joseph Woll. And Joseph Woll hasn't had the best rookie season with the Toronto Marlies this year, but he still is young. Goalies do tend to take a little bit longer to develop. Not everyone can be Carter Hart, being 20 or 21 years old and absolutely dominating at the NHL level. So hopefully we see Joseph Woll have a good season next year with Ian Scott, because tandems are always better than just singles. So I was actually debating whether I should include Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin in this video or not, and I thought it would be irresponsible of me to do that. For the sake of the channel, obviously, I could probably make an entire video on just those two players, and to just tack them on at the end of this video, I don't think would be too smart. So look for another video either later today or definitely by tomorrow talking about those two players. Let me know in the comment section how quickly you want to see that video, and if you guys want it by the end of tonight, then I will post it by the end of tonight, but more than likely by tomorrow. So leave me a like on this video and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, just let me know down in the comment section how you guys are doing, how life is like wherever you're living. I know I'm here in Toronto. Things are a big ghost town for the most part. Nobody's really going outside and stuff like that. It's kind of weird, but hopefully life feels a little bit more normal sooner rather than later. So hopefully you all are taking care out there and doing well, and I'll speak to you again very shortly.